Good morning and welcome to Reading Wikis for You, where we read the wiki articles for you. And today we're going to be reading about Jaghatai Khan, the Primarch of the White Scars from the Warhammer 40,000 fictional universe. Just as a quick reminder, normally during the week we will do real places, events, people, things, etc. But for the weekend, I like to have a little bit of fun and explore some of the great wikis for fictional universes that are out there. And in this one, we're looking at Warhammer 40,000. So I hope you enjoy it. And don't forget, while I'm reading, drop a comment down below. I'd love to see what articles you'd like me to read next. So without further ado, let's get started. Jaghatai Khan, known as the Great Kahn or the Warhawk, was the Primarch of the White Scars Space Marine Legion. Known for his secluded and fierce nature, the Kahn was commonly overlooked and seen as a barbarian, but in truth was a highly cultured individual. Most of the records about him are from the White Scars, and as such, can be subject to variety and unreliability. The Chaos Emissary to Lorgar called him the Warrior. History. Youth. It is said that the Kahn landed on a planet in the segmentum Pacificus named, by the Imperium, Mundus Planus, or, as the native population called it, Chogoris. It is a fertile world with wide open green plains and tall white mountains and blue seas. At the time of the Great Crusade, the people had developed to a black powder stage. A census shows that the dominant empire was a well-organized aristocracy which had conquered most of the planet with well-equipped and highly disciplined armies, maintaining armored horsemen and tight blocks of infantry. Their leader was the Palatine, and he won all of his battles with his great army. To the west of the Palatine's empire was the Empty Quarter, a barren grassland with little resources. As such, it was never invaded. It was the home to wandering tribes of vicious horsemen who fought each other for their ancestral lands. The Palatine would sometimes lead forces in to capture slaves or merely to hunt the tribesmen for fun. Khan's legacy began here. He was found by Khan, leader of a small tribe known as the Talskars, who saw the Primarch as a gift from the gods. It is said that he had a fire in his eyes, the sign of a great warrior. He was hated by the other tribes because of his ability to see beyond the constant warfare on the steppes. It is said that the most influential moment in his life was the slaying of his father by the rival Kurayed tribe. Kahn, even as a young child, was the greatest warrior of the tribe and gathered troops to avenge the death of his father. They moved on the Kurayed tribe and razed it to the ground, killing every man, woman, and child in a killing frenzy. Kahn took the head of the enemy tribe leader and mounted it on his tent. This is what shaped him into a man of fierce honor, loyalty, and ruthlessness. From then on, he swore to end the fighting, unite all the peoples of the steppes, and bring an end to the brother fighting brother. He fought hundreds of battles against other tribes and defeated hunting packs sent by Palatine. Each tribe they conquered was absorbed into the Talaskars, and he made military service mandatory while splitting tribes up and merging them with others to remove tribal differences. His warriors were fiercely loyal to him, and he promoted from the ranks based on merit and ability. 10 summers later, as the tribe moved to their winter settlements, the Primarch was traveling on a mountainside with a group of his followers. A vast avalanche pushed him and his group back down the mountain, killing the normal men. Jaghatai survived, but could not get back up the mountain in time before the tribe moved on. Kahn was caught by one of the Palatine's hunting band. All that returned of that band was one mutilated rider with the head of the son of the Palatine, who had accompanied the hunting band, and a note saying that the people of the steppes were not his toys anymore. When the snows cleared, an enraged Palatine gathered a massive army and determined to march west to wipe the tribes from the face of the planet. He had, however, underestimated the power and ability of Kahn, and brought his usual, highly disciplined army of heavily armored warriors. Another army, under his general Subedai, secretly led an army across the previously impassable Kuzil Khan desert. These proved to be his downfall, as they could not catch the lightly armored tribesmen. The constant rain of arrows from the tribesmen took their toll on the tight ranks of warriors. Eventually, the tribesmen defeated the army of the Palatine, who escaped back to his capital with a select few bodyguards. The rest of the army was slaughtered, almost to the last man. After the battle, the tribal elders gathered and announced that Jaghatai Khan was now Great Khan of the whole land. It was during this time that Jaghatai met comrades who would serve with him for centuries to come, such as Kin Shah, Hasik, and Targutai Yasuge. Kahn now began the long process of conquering the rest of the planet. He gave cities two choices: surrender or be wiped out. Most surrendered, but many were destroyed, utterly wiped from the face of the planet. Eventually they came to the palace of the Palatine, where he demanded the head of the Palatine on a spike. His request was obliged, and he adorned his tent with his greatest conquest. In 20 years, he had conquered the largest empire in the world's history. He now had the problems of ruling the empire, not something he had originally wanted. His people had no wish to rule these new lands, only to carry on living in the old ways. The people dispersed back to a tribal existence, and Kahn ruled over them all with his generals by his side. 6 months later, the emperor arrived, and Kahn knew at once that this man could fulfill his dream to unite all of the stars above them in one mighty empire. In front of all of his generals, he dropped to one knee and pledged his service to the emperor. He was given command of the 5th Legion of Space Marines. Upon being reunited with his gene sons of the 5th Legion, known by this point as the Star Hunters, Jaghatai sought to assimilate to new, mostly Terran troops into Chogorian culture and tactics, while his new recruits from his homeworld were being planned. The Legion's tactics were completely overhauled to emphasize little but pure speed and maneuver. After the battle against the Nephilim on Hoad, the Star Hunters became the White Scars. Jaghatai Khan gained a fierce reputation during the Great Crusade, and particularly the Ullanor Crusade, but mostly kept it to himself, save friendships with Horus and Magnus the Red. Conversely, he became detested by primarchs such as Fulgrim. Horus Heresy, choosing a side. Despite the fact that Horus felt that Kahn was the most likely to join him over all remaining loyalist primarchs, Jaghatai in fact never intended to switch allegiances and stayed true to his father. However, he did receive conflicting astropathic messages as to what had transpired in the Istvan system, and decided to initially hold back his forces until he could determine the true nature of things. When Rogaldorn sent a plea for all remaining loyal Astartes forces to make their way to Terra, Kahn followed, reluctantly leaving the nearby Space Wolves to fend for themselves against the Alpha Legion, while also ignoring calls by Horus to attack his brother Leman Russ. The Kahn most of all sought answers for what could have led to this bloodshed before he would take any side in the conflict. However, for a time the White Scars became bogged down against orcs and warp storms in the Chondak system as part of an elaborate trap by the Alpha Legion. Jaghatai eventually managed to break the Alpha Legion blockade and made his way to the source of all these troubles to investigate it for himself, Prospero. At Prospero, the Kahn and his men found no clear answers or space wolves as had been reported, only ruins and the ghosts of slain thousand suns. Eventually, however, the Kahn confronted a projection of Magnus the Red. Magnus implored his brother and former friend to finally choose a side in the rebellion and discussed what both hoped to gain from the Great Crusade. But in the end, the Kahn shattered the Shade with his Tulwar sword. Shortly after, Mortarion, Primarch of the Death Guard, also appeared on Prospero and tried to convince his brother to join with them. Jaghatai refused yet another offer, stating that while the Emperor is a tyrant, Horus had become a slave to the warp and had attempted to manipulate him to his own ends. This time, the Khan's choice came to a duel. The two Primarchs battled fairly evenly, though Jaghatai was faster and Mortarion had greater endurance. Eventually, when the White Scars and Death Guard fleets began to clash in space, Mortarion withdrew. Meanwhile, in space, the failure in Mortarion's plan became apparent. During his time on Prospero, the Kahn was faced with an attempted pro-Horus coup by two of his own commanders, Hasek Noyan Khan and Torgun Khan. It was through the efforts on Siban Khan that it had failed. Hit and run. For the next 4 years, Jaghatai had his Scars wage a brutal attrition hit-and-run campaign against the traitor lines. But with the road to Terra blocked by enemy fleets and warp storms, he could not reach the Emperor. Following the loss of his close friend and subordinate Kin Shah in the Battle of Kalium Gate, Jaghatai became determined to forge a path home where he believed his destiny lay. Upon finding the Dark Glass artifact, the White Scars were cornered by their pursuers, and as Jaghatai prepared to settle his score with Mortarion in the face of certain doom, Targutai Yasuge sacrificed himself to the device to open a portal into the webway. Refusing to allow Yasuge's sacrifice to be for nothing, the Khan chose to escape over honor and fled from Mortarion. Once inside the webway, Jaghatai's ship, Lance of Heaven, was boarded by demons, and the Khan slew the Keeper of Secrets, Manushya Rakshasi, thanks to the efforts of Revuel Arvida. The White Scar's fleet was able to navigate the webway and reappear over Terra. On Terra, Jaghatai Khan met with Rogel Dorn, Leman Russ, Sanguinius, and Malcator the Sigillite to discuss their war strategy. The Khan disapproved of Dorn's defensive approach to the war and urged a swift attack on Horus's forces. He agreed to a degree with Leman Russ, who was preparing to leave Terra and face Horus aboard the Vengeful Spirit directly. Jaghatai Khan, along with Sanguinius, later appeared at the Battle of Beta Garman, though over a month late due to difficult warp travel. The Khan immediately took over organizing hit-and-run strikes throughout the Beta Garman war zone. However, the Loyalists were ultimately outmaneuvered by Horus and Sanguinius, and the Khan agreed that Dorn's gambit at Beta Garman had reached its limit and it was time to return to Terra. During the final phase of the Solar War, Jaghatai dispatched his scars to above and below the orbital disk of the Sol system in an attempt to counter flanking assaults by the traitors. During the early portion of the Battle for Sol, he expressed his belief that Horus had failed and that they had already bought enough time to allow for Robut Guilliman to arrive with reinforcements. Siege of Terra. During the Siege of Terra, Jaghatai Khan was initially forbidden from venturing outside the walls by Rogel Dorn, something the Khan refused to abide by. Jaghatai in particular resented the abandoning the large amounts of Imperial Army conscripts outside the palace to their fate, as well as the lack of a protective defensive strategy. Later, during the first traitorous assaults upon the outermost trenches around the palace, Jaghatai led a White Scar's jet bike charge from the Eternity Wall. They swept through the traitor ranks, with Jaghatai slaying over 40 Death Guard personally. However, he was eventually forced from his bike and overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of traitor Astartes, being wounded by a warp-tainted blade and becoming ill for the first time in his life. Surrounded, the Khan may have died had he not been rescued by Sanguinius, who pulled his brother back to a waiting aircraft and withdrew back into the palace. The Khan's raid had other purposes, however, uncovering intelligence that the Dark Mechanicum were constructing siege engines around the palace. Following the fall of the Lion's Gate, the situation for the Loyalists worsened drastically. During a panicked command meeting, Jaghatai Khan flew into a rage when he heard General Saul Nibiron and Militant Colonel Clement Brone bemoaning the hopelessness of the situation. The Khan ejected the two from Bob Bastion, something Dorn later regretted and saw as unnecessary. Not wanting to be bound by Dorn's purely defensive strategy, the Khan lobbied for a rapid assault to retake Lion's Gate. Dorn allowed Jaghatai a degree of autonomy in an attempt to control him during the battle. During the battle for the Colossi Gate, the Khan led a 300-strong jet bike assault against Death Guard besiegers before quickly turning around and withdrawing back to their defenses. Alongside Blood Angels, Captain Raldoron, Custodes Captain General Constantin Valdor, and Marshal Aldana Agatha, Jaghatai succeeded in holding the Colossi Gate against a Death Guard, Thousand Sons, and demonic assault. After traitor forces penetrated the Mercury and Exultant walls, the Loyalist war effort seemed doomed. However, it was then that Jaghatai Khan announced his intent to retake the Lionsgate spaceport, to not only slow the flow of traitor reinforcements on the planet, but also allow for Robut Guilliman to easily land his own forces once he arrived. An exhausted Rogel Dorn did not protest, and the Khan led a massive assault of the White Scars and Terran Fist armored alongside the Sky Fortress. During the height of the fighting, Jaghatai Khan again came to blows with his brother Mortarion. Faced with Mortarion's new demonic endurance and strength, the Khan was brutally beaten down and nearly defenseless. However, he was able to find a weakness in the Death Lord with his pride. Jaghatai Khan scolded Mortarion for being weak and giving in to the powers of the warp, while he himself had resisted the temptations of chaos and remained true to the Emperor. Mortarion flew into a rage, which the Khan took advantage of to launch a second wave of dizzying attacks that overwhelmed the Primarch. In the end, the badly wounded Jaghatai Khan was impaled on the blade of Mortarion's scythe, but simply pulled his body along its length to get face to face with the Death Guard Primarch. The Loyalist Primarch decapitated Mortarion, who was banished into the warp in a massive explosion similar to that of a vortex weapon. Later, the Khan's nearly dead body was discovered by Ilya Revalian and Jaghatai Khan, who sought to take him to Malcador. By all mortal standards, the Kahn was dead. Nonetheless, Malkador used his psychic powers to try and heal the Primarch. He thought he had succeeded before noticing that it was the Emperor himself who had done it. Kahn would live, though it would take a long time for him to reawake. Sometime later, after the siege had concluded in a loyalist victory, Ilya Revalian visited the still recovering Jaghatai to bid him farewell. By this point, Jaghatai had since awoken, but was still in bad physical shape and had great difficulty speaking and remembering things. Post-heresy. After the heresy, Kahn went on to lead the White Scars in the Great Scouring. During the campaign to conquer the Yasun sector, Kahn came into conflict with both traitors and Dark Eldar raiders. During the Battle of Korosil V against a mighty Dark Eldar lord, it was reported that Kahn was lost within the webway during the pursuit of the Xenos. Character. Even his brother Primarchs understand little of him. His prowess with the blade earns him their respect, even as his waywardness causes them concern. Guilliman has never trusted him. Russ is exasperated by him. Lorgar despises him for an untutored savage. Only Horus sees him for what he truly is. They are kindred souls, those two, warrior archetypes, bound by shared codes of martial honor and impatient with heavy fetters of empire. Unquote. Chris Raitt on Jaghatai Khan. War Gear. During the heresy, Jaghatai Khan is seen wielding a tulwar-shaped power sword and wearing a helm that resembled a snarling beast. His more famous war gear consisted of the white tiger dao, wildfire panoply, archaeotech pistol known as the Storm's Voice, and Sojutsu pattern void bike. Trivia. Jaghatai Khan's background and history is strongly reminiscent of Genghis Khan and how he united the warring Mongolian tribes and led them to conquer an empire which stretched from the eastern coast of Asia to Europe. Like Jaghatai Khan, the Mongolians made use of fast hit-and-run strikes from horseback to outmaneuver heavier armored soldiers. Chagatai was also the name of one of Genghis Khan's sons. All right, there you have Jaghatai Khan, Primarch of the White Scars. So, make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, or you just want to get more content, and, as always, drop a comment down below. Let us know what you thought and what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching.